Hi, everybody. Welcome to the SERVE Brew. It's Tori Townley. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. I am so excited because today, I'm seriously fangirling a little bit. We're getting coffee with Pastor Michael. I meant to ask you how to say your name. Corbisiero? Did I say it right?
Close. Corbisiero.
Corbisiero. You don't say the I. Dang it,
Yeah.
that was one of my prep questions. Corbisiero from Red Rocks Church in Colorado. Like, huge, big deal. You guys have seen them. Like, I have to hold myself back from the weekly outreach highlights. Like, they can only have one a week. They cannot have three or four. Those are prime spots because there's so many creative things, amazing stuff going on. So thank you, Pastor Michael, for being on today.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be here. And don't worry about the last name. It's just actually something I just recently changed. And so people are trying to figure out, they're like, how do I pronounce it? And it's my mom's side of my family that's Italian. So it happens a lot. It happens a lot.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, my maiden name is German. It's Oler King, and that is just like, don't even try. So I get it. That's cool. But oh my gosh, like I said, I'm so excited to have you guys on or have you on sharing about Red Rocks and all y'all are doing. I have to say, during COVID, like probably a month in when it first hit, outreach was crazy. The world was crazy. I was just like, my job at Servolution is collecting ideas and figuring out like what is the beauty in the world, how can we inspire each other. And I had gone through a moment of just being drained, like this is hard. And you guys put out this video as a highlight reel of just like 1,000 acts of kindness that was going on, and it was set to the song The Blessing that had just come out. And I tell you, that moment I sobbed in my driveway watching that video of just like, this is why I do what I do, this is why we are the body of Christ, we are here to make a difference. And that's what you guys live out every day. Just that, I know it's not a highlight reel every day, but when I see y'all stuff, it's like, dang, that's what we're here for. So I just honor you guys for that personally made a difference for me. So
Oh, thank you. No, I appreciate it. I love that video. It's just during COVID, right? Like so many people were trying to figure out what to do and unmotivated to do a whole lot of things. And so I kind of made that stance of, hey, we're going to keep pushing forward, and the gospel doesn't stop just because we have COVID. And so that's a byproduct of that, but thankful to be a part of it.
definitely impacted a lot of people. So thank you for that heart. And okay, I want to jump into your beautiful, amazing heart and vision, but we have a tradition. We have to ask you, when you go to Starbucks, what's your order? What you getting?
Yes. So I'm actually a little bit unique when it comes to Starbucks. So I actually do mushroom coffee in the morning. So if you've heard of like Four Sigmatic or something like that. So I'm not a huge Starbucks drinker, but when I do, I'm kind of one of those people that goes in and I'm kind of like eye candy. I see the seasonal drinks. I'm like, I'm here. Might as well try something different. It's usually something with way too much sugar for my own good. And I'm like halfway in and just like having a huge sugar high. But I am a big mushroom coffee drinker, so a little bit unique, but I had to share that.
I should have known that. Colorado. Oh, come on.
Yes.
Four Sigmatic is the best though. I have had it and it's wonderful. Yes. So thank you. Thank you.
I know,
Okay.
you got a little like protein powder as a creamer in there. It's a great way to start the day. So
So good. It's way better than regular Starbucks. Okay. Thank you. I'm glad I know this. Good reminder. Okay, real quick, tell us a little about you, like personally, what's your life, your family, your brief testimony, and how you got where you are.
yes, gosh, where to start? So I grew up not going to church at all. I was raised Roman Catholic. We were kind of Christmas Easter family. I hated going to church. I was like, Mom, I'll do the rosary. I'll watch the Passion of the Christ. Like, don't make me go to church. Hated it. And really like built a ton of idols in my life, based on school or sports or relationships. Just was always built around, what can the world offer me? And being younger, right, you kind of don't have a reason to, because everything in your life seems to be going well, externally at least, internally not so much. And so I actually found Red Rocks in 2010, when I was attending Colorado School of Mines for engineering. So for those who don't know, I have an engineering background in chemical and biochemical engineering. And my freshman year, a friend was like, hey, I heard the band The Fray is going to be playing at this church. Why don't you come? And I was like, well, I loved The Fray back then. How to Save a Life was like one of my favorite songs. Had them on my iPod Shuffle or whatever that was, and showed up to church and was like, "What in the world is happening right now?" I'm used to like not this experience growing up in church, and so that kind of actually planted a seed for me in my life. Over those next 2 years, I went through like getting all those idols ripped out of my life. So I was in a relationship for 2 years. They got, we broke up. I had been running in college collegiately, and ended up basically not being able to walk for 2 years, going through some reconstructive hip surgeries, lost like half my hip capsule and quad, and a whole nother story for another day. But kind of got to the end of myself, right? Where it was like, I had all these things, and then what happens? And so I made that decision of like, well, if I'm going to sit here in this depression, this mess, why don't I give Christ a chance? What would it look like to start fighting for my life? And so I showed it back up at Red Rocks 2012-ish, right around there. And the rest has been history. So kept getting involved, met my wife at church in 2014, but we didn't start dating until 2017 after going through crazy set of circumstances and kind of our own spiritual journeys. And then actually ended up graduating from Colorado School of Mines and Engineering, was working in consulting, and always had this plan to get into medicine. So I was like, on this route, it's my plan still, forget about it. And then that's when Doug, one of our teaching pastors who oversees our Austin campus, was like, hey, why don't we grab some lunch? I'd love to order some coffee, and met. And he was like, I think you'd be great for this internship program thing. And I was like, no way, I wouldn't do it, not in a million years. And he also thought that I'd be great with our groups ministry. And so I was like, nope, wouldn't do that. It's the last thing I would do out of everything at Red Rocks. And sure enough, over that year, I applied to be an intern because I was like, I'll just be obedient to what God has for me, see what happens. And got the internship, but didn't feel like I had just any sign from God. I was like, I need like this blinking red light, because for me, like, I just got into, my doctorate program at Anschutz, our medical school out here, and was really proud of my year of completion of that first year program. And at the end of that, never really felt like I got a sign. So I said, hey, I'm not doing this internship. I'm going to move forward. And then 2 days later, show up at Red Conference and one of our young adult conferences. And sure enough, as God is, he just wrecks me. I'm sitting in the back. I don't remember anything. I just started, bawling my eyes out. And I'm justifying it like, I'm probably tired. This isn't what I should be doing. And they do an altar call. So I'm like, okay, I'll go up there. I'll do whatever, do the thing. And God met me in that space. And I was going up, and one of our, this male had come around the side that wasn't supposed to be there that night, as far as I believed. It was our main pastor, Sean Johnson. And so he starts praying for me, snots everywhere at this point. I'm just like, I don't know, God, what am I doing with my life? And I feel like I'm supposed to do this thing. And he said something super profound to me that was, just super simple, but just, you'll never regret being obedient to what God has for you. And so I took a jump, took that leap of faith, and called my school, told them I'm not coming back. And they were like, it sounds like you're making a very rational decision. Maybe you should think about this. And I was like, yes, it's irrational. It's God. And so I kind of jumped into ministry full-heartedly, open-handedly, kind of like, I have no idea what's going on, but I'm going to trust you. And over the years got married to my wife. We've been married just over a year. So we were a COVID wedding. Don't have any kids. I want a Bernese Mountain Dog, but trying to convince her of that. So we'll see if she's up for it. The hair is the thing. So I was like, I'll buy like 2 Roombas if we get a Bernese Mountain Dog. But we'll see. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. But just loved hanging out. In Colorado, we have such a great outdoor scene out here to get out and do all sorts of things and continue to serve the church and do it in community.
Oh my gosh. That was like, I hate asking the question, share your brief testimony, because that was Pandora's box. It's like, wait,
Yes.
so much to unpack. But thank you for just giving that snapshot, because I think it helps people be like, we fall in love with people's stories and like who you are and what you bring to the table, and we see the fruit of your work, but to know like the person behind it and like how you got there and what it took, like the sacrifices and the faith that it took for you to be there, is just so huge. Like Pastor Sean had no idea when he was like, just do what God says. Like that's actually really hard, a lot harder than you might know, sir. But we're so glad that you followed that, because you are a gift. Like just from the short conversations I've had with you, like you are such a gift, the way that God wired your mind and the experiences that you've had and the heart that you have. Like, thank you for showing up for this community and for pouring into not just your community in Colorado, but like outreach people and the church at large. Like that's a gift. So we honor you for that. Thank you for showing up. Um, I want to ask now, like, let's learn more about Red Rocks, the church. Like, what you guys, obviously, you guys are making a huge impact. Like, what are some of your things, your sweet spots, your outreach focuses? What makes you guys you?
Yeah. So Red Rocks Church was built upon this idea of making heaven more crowded by being a front porch for prodigals. And so, we have so many new people coming into our church each and every day, looking for Christ, like myself, as you saw in my story, right? Like, had no business ending up at a church, but ended up there just because something was different. And we really pride ourselves on being welcoming to people no matter where they're at in their walk. We always say, we're just a bunch of messed up people pursuing a perfect God. And I think sometimes we get like a little bit fatigued with that statement, but the whole heart behind it, right, is like, hey, we're just as jacked up as you are, but we're going to be real and authentic about our struggles, what we're going through. Our teaching pastors have always been very, very raw about what they go through from stage and from the pulpit, which I think just sets an example of, hey, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to clean yourself up to come here, or before God in general. We just want you to feel like you can come to a place to experience Him and start your journey. And so that's kind of from a high level, 30,000 foot view, how Red Rocks Church operates, and really the lens that we see everything we do, from outreach to Kids Rock to youth to young adults, you name it. So it's been quite a journey to see, our church continue to grow. I think since 2005 is when we started. And over the span, like 2012 to 2018, I think our church like 10 times the size or something like that. And then watching through COVID as the online campus has grown, to see it, exponentially grow into what it is now.
Wow. Yeah, it's huge. It is a big span. And I'm kind of jumping a little bit, but I want to go ahead and jump into this now. You have this background in engineering, and obviously, like, there is such a specific skill set and like way that you're wired to be able to come in and organize. And what I see at Red Rocks from my perspective is it is huge. Like you're navigating a big ship, but what happens, somehow you are able to take like this big scale stuff and it still remains high quality through and through. Like the stuff you guys are posting and the moments that you're capturing, it's like this, it does not get watered down. The bigger it gets, the it seems like the more high quality it is. So can we just like get in your head a little bit about like, how do you guard that heart? How do you bring these strategies and this thought process to the table? um that's a lot. That's a
Yeah.
mouthful. I'm sorry.
Yes. Yes. There's a lot of tangents we could go with
Yeah.
that, for sure. I'm, having the engineering background, very passionate about systems, for sure. But I think we've always, had a value of excellence at our church. We'd rather do a few things well, than cast the net super wide and do things not with excellence. And so I think that's the foundation of everything. And specifically when it comes to even like outreach, right? We had this church that grew to this massive size, and we were like, okay, so how do we organize a system around that to make it very clear and easy and accessible for people to get plugged in? And so with my engineering background, right, I'm like, my favorite thing to do, I tutor students on the side, is like, how do I take like a really complex topic? You'll find this in engineering school. They'll teach you all the derivatives and how to, create this equation from scratch, but you really just need like the basic equation of like what comes in must come out. And I try to do that with everything we do with, and I feel like we do that a lot with our churches. How do we make something that's very complex, sometimes even biblically, and make it really, really simple? And so, even specifically when it comes to outreach, I kind of do that same thing, is how do I create a system where it's, how do I get people who just come to our church for the first time? How do I get them engaged with our church in a way that they may otherwise wouldn't? You think of serving and it's like, I hated serving in high school. I had to do my 20 hours of community service just to check the box, and I got it done. But how do I get those people to experience in a way that's fun, exciting, engaging, makes a difference, and then start to mobilize people towards like what is the discipleship of serving really, of like let's get a bunch of people in the game and then talk about what it looks like to get involved on a monthly basis or a weekly basis, and creating projects around that. There's a lot we could dive into with that, but that's kind of the high level.
No, that's a great answer. And I would love to like zone in a little bit more just based on the questions and the thought process that you put in. So say I'm new at Red Rocks, just like you said, and maybe I don't want to serve, but I showed up at a project. Like what is kind of like the journey that you have dreamed up for a volunteer as they go through? Like how do I get involved? What is your hope for that person along the way?
Yeah. So kind of when it comes to outreach, we ask ourselves the question of, like if Red Rocks Church ceased to exist, would we have made a difference? And not that it's about Red Rocks, but have we truly been the hands and feet in Christ in our community? And so when someone comes in to serve, so you can serve on a weekend, you can serve in a specific ministry. When it comes to outreach specifically, someone might find out about a project in a variety of ways. So that might be through our website, through social media, through a church service, through a friend or whatever. And that's really the heart of that is thinking about like what I was saying, like a yearly, a monthly, and weekly opportunities to serve. So I might capture a lot of people in like a yearly Love Our City week that we do every year. Get a lot of people to join a bunch of their friends and serve. And that might just stir their heart of, here's what it's like to get outside the four walls of our church, or here's what it's like to get together with a bunch of people and serve the community and hear about the heart of, the organizations that we work with. And then with that, we'll always end, event with, hey, we've got opportunities happening all throughout the year for you to get involved with, and here's how you kind of learn more. And so as we, work with our organizations we work with, we always ask ourselves that question of like, what are the needs in our community, and how can we meet those needs, and who are organizations who are doing great work in those areas. And so we'll have projects happening consistently for people to really easily get involved. My hope is always like, how can I make it so the gap between you just sitting at home and serving is so small, where it's really, really easy for you to jump in and just experience something. Because I know that a lot of times it's just getting your feet wet, and then you're like, I really love that opportunity to serve the homeless. How do I do that regularly? And so those yearly opportunities to serve, and then those monthly opportunities kind of push people in that direction. And then we always push people towards like, hey, if you want to serve with that organization weekly, here are 5 ways you can do that. And so the whole idea, right, is just to make it as simple as possible, but really cultivate a culture of serving.
I love it. I love it. It's brilliant. And how many campuses like are you overseeing for outreach?
So we have 6 campuses at our church. We have 4 in Colorado, and then 1 in Brussels, Belgium, and 1 in Austin, Texas. So very different cultures, very different needs, and communities with all of those.
And so the pattern that you've said of like we're going to have this consistency that provides the structure, and then I'm guessing like you just kind of coach the campuses on how to be creative to fill in that structure, correct?
Exactly. Yeah. So I kind of alluded to that idea of like looking at each campus, so we'll have like a staff member that oversees each campus and saying, what are the needs of, for example, our Lakewood campus is close to downtown Denver. A lot, more of a homeless need in that area versus Park Meadows is more of like an affluent area. And so totally different needs. So for Park Meadows to focus on homelessness is not the correct approach. So, looking at, hey, as a staff member, what are the needs in our community? And then how do we meet those needs and partner with organizations to do that? And then how do we mobilize the church to come alongside these organizations to really, really meet that need? And so usually it involves, talking with organizations and being like, hey, what are the sticking points in your organization? Just tell us about what you do, the intricacies. A lot of times, a lot of our projects come out of just random little nuggets that they share. And they're like, oh yeah, I do this thing on the side, and I store it at home, and I try to figure this out. And we're like, well, wait, tell me more about that. And because a lot of times it's just those small things that really make a big difference with these organizations. And as you just develop relationship, right, we want to kind of, when you start something, everyone wants to start and like go big. It's like, hey, just start. It's a relationship. It's going to take years. It's going to be messy. but just kind of sticking through it thick and thin, and continuing to figure out how you can best support and make a difference.
That's brilliant. I love it. And I love that your job, it sounds like to me, is it's really like helping your leaders learn how to see and hear with the eyes of see with the eyes of Christ and hear with the heart of heaven. Because you're
Mm.
not here like to say, hey, here's the play, let's run it across the board. But it's like I want to teach you to have sensitivity to the Holy Spirit. And that's where the beauty and that's how that high quality stuff continues to happen, is because it's the Holy Spirit you're allowing to do his thing. So that's so powerful and so cool to me that you've really achieved that. I'm not like worshiping you for it, but it's just something you guys have done and y'all have created a beautiful culture. And I think I wrote this down too about you guys is we talk all the time about like outreach really is kind of like it's got its own ecosystem. It's like there's a lot of moving pieces, there's big picture factors, but there's also, like you said, those one little tiny moments. Like you have to zoom in and you got to see like the minute stuff because that affects everything. So what are some of your like philosophies as you've kind of navigated this world and brought some things to light and really developed some stuff? How do you see just some of that, like how do you see the pieces working together? I guess if you could paint a picture, as because here's what I'm thinking is churches who are listening, leaders who are listening are, I'm not sure what space they're at as far as growth, but a lot of our leaders are probably growing into a larger scale setting of how do we expand, how do we sustain things, but how do we keep that culture guarded? And so, just like, what are some of those consistent threads of like, this is how we keep that going? Does that make my
Yeah, that makes
questions are
yes.
so rattly? I can't help it. I'm poetic. I don't know.
No, I love it. I love it. And it's kind of interesting that you talk about that, because that's pretty much been my last year. Is as a church, we always said we would give internationally but go locally, and then we kind of started building. We used to do some things through our sports ministry a lot, and we kind of have these like one-off opportunities to serve, but we never really had this concentrated effort towards serving. And so January of this year, they kind of created this role for me to kind of start building it out locally, and then they were like, why don't you take over national, international, and got behind bars? And so that's kind of just been my little niche area of building that. And so I think it ultimately always starts with like knowing what your vision, mission, and values are, and that can be just a reflection of what you are as a church. But I think when there's a lot of great organizations with really great hearts doing not as great outreach. And so I think just always being really clear about like, what is it that we're doing? Because you can say yes to hundreds and hundreds of things, but find yourself like stretched super, super thin. And so we've always been about, hey, let's choose a few partners in each one of these levels, like locally, nationally, and internationally, and go really, really deep and make a big difference, then go super, super wide. Because these are relationships, right? And these are people that you're impacting. And, if you're thinking internationally, these are, a lot of countries that are going through very difficult times. And so to go in and pull out and not be consistent can be really detrimental. And so I would rather have things grow really, really slow. So as a church, we're seeing, pre-COVID, 10 plus thousand people on a weekend. And then with online campus growing even more, it's easy to say, well, let's do hundreds of projects, across the board, but we wouldn't be doing those with excellence. And so really thinking about, who are those organizations that I really, really want to work with that kind of align with what are the needs of my community, right? That's a huge, huge part of it. I just think really getting clear about that, and then getting clear about what you're saying yes and no to, even within that for projects, because it's easy within an organization to have hundreds of projects that they're doing. There's an organization I was talking to the other day that I think they said they were doing like over 100 different events throughout the year. And so for us, even as a church, just with one organization to partner with them, I was like, hey, let's talk about maybe quarterly, and start there. Steward the few things well and let that grow. And then I think a lot of times with outreach too, just being, just thinking about what's the call to action? Where are we pushing people? And I've kind of this thread that I've always talked about, like discipleship of service, but thinking about where are you trying to lead your flock? And so, right, as I talked about, like the yearly stuff is great, the big fun, rah, rah, to get a lot of people involved. But I'm really hoping to get people involved more monthly, with these projects and getting more of our church involved and getting it in front of people that this is what we do. But we're always discipling people towards, hey, you can serve with any organization without us organizing a project throughout the year. And so we're always thinking, talking with our organizations and saying like, hey, if we do this event with you in January, we'd love for you to get up there and express your heart, your mission, your vision, your values, what you're about, but really talk about what it's like to like serve in a specific way after this event. So maybe we were making like some kits, for like a sex trafficking organization. What is it like to go serve? What are 3 ways you can serve with that organization? So it always gives a very specific call to action. And then the last thing I think is just being with today's day and age, you're just getting inundated with information. And so how can you just make it very, very clear and concise what you're trying to do? And then make it just the gap between, someone getting involved and not really, really thin. So it's just like, here's a really, really practical, easy way for you to get in the game. I just think, just having that clear set of communication, whether it's social media or email or website or all the above, I just think that's so, so important to get in front of people.
That is brilliant. I think it's such a gift too. Like you said, we're inundated with information right now. I think for a lot of people, myself personally, in my own life, it can feel just overwhelming, just like the opportunities around us. Like, where do I focus? Like, I could do this, I could do that. I need to advocate for this problem and that. And to have like the covering of church to be able to say, as a church body, we're going to focus on these things and we're going to really together make a deep impact. Like, yes, you can advocate for other things, you can get involved, but just to like have some clarity and focus from our leadership, I think is such a gift. And then, like you said, to make it clear, the next step and the call to action is so much fun to me. Like, that's an adventure for me to take. I want to take the next step. I've fallen in love with it. You've done the work for me. I just had to jump in, and now I just can't wait to see what's next. So I think that's brilliant, to just be able to map it out that way for people. Okay. I think everyone, including myself, is on the edge of their seat to just hear a spitfire list of like, what are the outreaches y'all are doing? Like I said, feature y'all at least once a week, if not twice or 3 times. I really have to hold myself back. But like, y'all are constantly doing cool stuff. God Behind Bars, Love Our City Week, Oasis Rooms. Like, can you just give us like a beautiful picture of your favorite, maybe top 10 stuff? I don't
Ooh, top
know.
10. That's a lot. I could go on forever. So hold me back if I talk too long. Gosh, so maybe I'll pick a couple from each area. So locally, right, we did do a Big Lover City Week each year. And I kind of talked about that a bit of that's like a fun, really engaging week to get our whole church mobilized to serve. And so I think we had over 20 projects for that, and we hadn't done it in a couple of years. So it was good to really reset that. And we were like, hey, let's go deeper than broader. And so I think we were able to get up to 1,000 people really involved with that week at our church. With that, all across the city, doing projects from, making kits to meeting with teachers and delivering school supplies for them to helping with the local schools and like renovations going into the year to like a foster system event that we did, you name it. So it's kind of everywhere in between, but I love those kinds of events just because they're the springboard for just building excitement about serving. And so that was like a huge one we did in August of this year. And then another one that I really loved locally was this Keepsake Kits event we did with Walk With Me. There's this organization we work with. I'll probably talk about it later on as we go. But they help moms and families that have lost a child right around the time of birth. And so the founders have a crazy testimony and story that they always share. But they create these keepsake kits for the families that they go and bring them to them in the hospital that has like lactation support and print molds and little booklets of resources and support. And it just helps start a conversation and develop connection and really be a light in those moments where it's difficult. And so we were able to do a big event with that and have, like 125 people across 2 campuses kind of get involved and making, I think, 500 kits. And so we were just super, super blown away by that opportunity. And then you mentioned the Oasis room. That was one that, kind of starts with relationship and conversation, right? Like over COVID, medical workers are going through it. And so we were kind of thinking about how can we support them? And we started with this cart with little snacks and things, just as they were, going on shift. How can we just share a little love and just through food, and started identifying some additional rooms that they had on some of their floors where they weren't using them. And so we just said, what if we renovated these rooms and put like a massage chair and a punching bag thing and then some essential oils, with the diffuser and all sorts of random stuff in there, just for them to, hey, if you need a break during your shift, you can kind of get away into a oasis, if you will. So that was a cool way to partner with St. Anthony's North Hospital in Thornton up here, where we have, I believe they have a Christian base to what they're doing, but in the medical field, right, a lot of times that's not as much of a focus. And so that was a super exciting one. Nationally, you talked about God Behind Bars. That's a huge part of our church. Every time Sean gets up there to preach, we talk about it. Say hello to our 3 God Behind Bars campuses. And so we started that a number of years ago. But the whole idea is we share messages in the prisons, and we have a volunteering team that goes in there and helps share those sermons. And so they're a week behind us, but it's the same sermon that we get. And then through that, we provided a lot of different resources like life groups or aftercare when they're getting out. We do some different programming for, as they get out of prison, to help them coming in church and what that's like, because it's a big experience. So it's a really cool way to just, stand in the gap for those that, like the least of these, in a way, where a lot of times people are thinking, they're in prison, I'm not going to worry about it. But we're like, hey, they deserve the love of Christ just as much as any of us. And so just love what we've been able to do there. I think there was like I forgot the stat, but over 200 people, I think, that have accepted Christ since we've reopened this past fall. So just a cool way to really meet people there. And with the growth of Pando, is like a tablet app where you can show sermons that way. We've been able to connect with more and more people across prisons that we're in and we're not in. And the cool thing is we don't even have Pando in Colorado prisons. So the people that are seeing that aren't even in Colorado right now, and we're getting tens of thousands of people watching that, which is so cool. And then internationally, we're all about, again, just growing deeper than broader. And so one of the organizations we work with, Compassion International, I'm sure a lot of our listeners have heard, is a huge partner of ours, but we kind of have this like 3-pronged approach, where compassion is kind of a main focus of where we do a lot of our support for children who are in poverty. But we work with, as they develop these child development centers, there's a lot of different needs. And so Hope International is an organization that we work with in terms of providing like financial education about savings and microfinancing and how do you buy a goat together, how that all works, and just different things like that. But those are specifically at those compassion centers. And then recently we helped start a church in Colombia with them, which was cool, through Compassion International. And then we have been able to kind of work over the years in Haiti. And so we've worked with an organization called Healing Waters. And the nice thing about that is as we develop these little child development centers in different cities, we've worked with, hey, how can we find some clean water solutions in those areas? And so we work with Healing Waters on building wells at those sites. And so one of our most recent ones in Colette, hopefully the end of this year, will meet like 1,400 to 1,600 children each day. And so it's cool to kind of think about like an ecosystem of that, right? Where we're not just maybe sending a team once, but we're going to like make an economic, like huge impact on the entire city and community.
Oh my gosh, there's so much here. There is so much here. Like, golly, how do you even process all of this on a daily basis? Like, there's
Yeah,
so much.
I know, right? I think it's just time, and I think God gifts me with like a visual memory. And so I'll see something and it'll stick somehow in there. But the more you're involved with stuff, the more you just get excited about it. You can't help yourself. And so when you can like live and breathe it and you can see these places and impact and change lives, it just, I don't know, it changes everything.
Yeah. Wow. You are anointed for this for sure. I wish I had a photogenic memory, not a photogenic. What's it called? What's the word? Photo.
Photographic,
That's
photograph.
it. See, I didn't even get my GED. So, oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Very cool.
Okay. I want to ask you what there's obviously so much that goes into it, but like if you had to pick one thing that's like, this is what brings a smile to my face about the role that I'm in, what is like the one thing that you're just like, this is why I do what I do?
Great question. Um, I think it's when you can see things firing on all cylinders. So what I mean by that is it's like when I can work with an organization, and we identify a way to help them, and you can see their face light up and they're like super excited about something. And then you have volunteers that are like super engaged and like and their lives are being changed by serving. And then add the extra layer of that where you get to see the impact after you've done that event on the people in that community. um, it just like fires you up because you just think about like all of the layers of that where you're like, okay, I'm impacting this nonprofit that's like day in and day out doing great work, but like looking for ways to like really move the meter and stuck. And so how can we like step in? And a lot of times when you just see that like life come out of them, we're like, this is amazing. I can see the life change. I'm super excited about what's happening. And then our volunteers just like being like, I want to serve again. How do I do this? And then well, every time you're meeting with people and seeing lives being changed, for the people you're serving, it's just, you can't put your finger on it, but it's special. And so I know it doesn't, isn't one specific thing, but when you see that happening over and over again, you're just excited about what you're doing.
I so get that. I so get that. The whole intersections thing, just like how all the layers are working together and they overlap. You're like, this must be what God had in mind. Like this must be what he meant. It just makes sense. It's so cool. I love that. It's a great answer. All right. If you could give like one testimony or story that just like sticks with you, like somebody's life that got rocked or just a moment that you always carry in your pocket, what would that be?
Yeah, I hate to go back to it, but it was with that organization Walk With Me with their keepsake kits. Um, so the story of it kind of starts with we called them and we're like, hey, um, we'd love to connect and see how we can work with you. And they were a big part of Red Rocks Church and have been attending for a long time. And started talking with them and they started telling me about all the different things they do. And they were like, yeah, we make these keepsake kits and we store them in our house and we make them in addition to our our full-time jobs, and keeping them in our house and like buying all these supplies, and they're buying them in like little spurts as they can afford it. And so I was like, just tell me more about that, and learning like how much of an expense it is for the organization to make those as well. And in addition to this time, I was like, what would it look like for us to just jump in and help make these just 1 year? And so we started that and made, I think, 100 of them and had like 20 volunteers there. So super small event. We're like, you know what, just be obedient with what we got. And as they grew as an organization, that next year COVID happened and destroyed everybody, of course, but we continued to kind of push through and did an event with them, same kind of event consistently with it, and had 50 people there doing, I think we did like half the kits, but did a bunch of other random stuff for them. And then that following year, this past year is when I was talking about, we were able to do 500 kits with like 125 people across 2 campuses. So the cool part about that, the culmination of it was at the event this past year, one of their families, the husband came up and shared a little bit about his heart about these kits. And he said something that I won't ever forget. And he was like, if my house was burning down, I would take these kits with me. That's like the first thing I would grab. And just like putting in perspective, you're thinking about all the material things and everything you can bring, and obviously family members first, but in terms of like the material stuff that you bring, he was like, that's how important these are to me. And so to think about, like the years that we, even just in a 3-year span, growing that and watching them, be able to get involved with more hospitals, and then hearing that story is just, yeah, so cool.
Oh, that's so special to be able to come alongside someone's dream and passion like that. It is, there's nothing better than seeing somebody be activated and get to come alongside and cheerlead and push that forward. So that is a really cool story. I love it. If you could give a word of advice to our listeners, like anything, just to encourage them, inspire them, what would you say?
Mm, um, I think just start small. I think just being clear about when I was saying this, being clear about but what it is you're supposed to be doing, what's your mission, what's your vision, and just stewarding the few things well, um, and being open-handed with it, right? Just like, okay, if this is the one project that God gave me, or the one organization, or here are the resources that I have as a church, let's steward that the best we can. Let's get scrappy and make a big enough difference, big difference as we can, and just continue to just be obedient with that. I know it can be discouraging at times, especially in the season we've come in, to be like, maybe I can't do short-term mission trips anymore, and our church is really focused on that. Or we were working with these organizations, but they're out of business, or maybe the funds look differently, as a church going through COVID. But just being obedient with whatever you're given every day, open-handed with it, and God will do the rest, right? We can just give it to Him.
So good. So good. I love it. I do want to go back. You keep talking about like the whole idea of going deep before going wide, and it's really wild. I'm sure she wouldn't mind if I share, but my pastor's wife, we were in a small group recently, and we're going on. I think we're a church plant going on year 4, I think. Um, and she shared a word with us, and it was like, I just feel like God's telling us to really focus on going deep, and He'll take us wider. And ever since then, I feel like we have seen that happen, and just going deeper with our partnerships, with our outreach, with ourselves spiritually. And it's almost like that was an obedience act, and now not an act of obedience. And to see the way that that has carried, and now the influence is changing, there has been a widening, but it's just kind of like when we devote our hearts to God in the way that you're saying, and trust Him and do our very best with what's in front of us, it's like, okay, I'm gonna take care of the widening part. So for our listeners, like I think that's really important. We can feel pressure, we can feel comparison, we can be like, well, this church did like all these things, and they're tackling hunger in their city, and they're doing all of this, and I just feel like I got to get to that level. No, no, no. Like God has that rhythm and that system and everything in mind. So I just love that you kept saying that. It's just kind of weird. Like I literally have written that phrase so many times. We've talked about it so much, and it's
Yes.
crazy. But really cool. God's doing something. Okay. I'm gonna throw in a bonus question. Well, there's one more question, but I'm throwing in another one. I have to ask, what are y'all doing for holidays? Everybody's kind of starting to think about that. Getting ready for Thanksgiving, Christmas. Do y'all have anything traditionally planned? Anything different this year? What's up?
Yeah, we always do Operation Christmas Child each year, which I'm sure a lot of churches do. We've gotten creative with it this year, and just trying to figure out how can we really engage our youth ministry. I know there's like a Barna study that came out about the future of missions, and talking a little bit about that. But one thing that really has stood out to me with our youth generation is this, that they really want to change and influence the world. And so how can we like empower them to do that? And so we're going to try and do some creative things of, hey, what if we just take 100 boxes, grab our student leaders and our youth ministries, and pull up at Target and say, hey, each of you take 5 and go fill them up. Just a small way to like get a sixth grader, middle school student who just has no idea what he or she is in for, to go serve, and talk about like, hey, what is this, this one box going to the ends of the world to meet a kid, and the material need is great, right? But it's a spiritual need that's transcend everything. And so that's the opportunity of each one of those boxes, is to share the gospel. So that's like a small one. And then over Christmas, we always do a ton of like Christmas present wrapping events for foster children. I know we're trying to grow this one event we did with an organization called Child House in our area, to do like 1,500 presents this year. We'd love to deliver them to the families. And so we're trying to figure out ways with that of how can we just be more intentional in relationship with that, and not just thinking about, again, like the physical need, but the spiritual need as well. And then the last one, I'm super excited about this Dream Center. I'm sure there's a lot of them across the country, but our Denver Dream Center is doing an event with basically they rent out Coors Field, which is our baseball field for the Rockies. They have families come in, and you can basically donate or adopt a family if you want, where you buy them their Christmas presents and you meet them in person. And so there's this big event. Lowe's comes in and does some building stuff, and they need like 1,000 volunteers for it. And so just super excited to just like really mobilize our church to try and meet the needs of some of those, especially during the holiday season. So those are just some of the few things, but I'm always open and open hand with ideas. You never know what happens as the holidays come
That's
in.
fun. Sorry, I put you on the spot. I was like, if I don't ask this questions, my listeners are going to be very frustrated. I was like, put them on the spot. It might be a secret. I don't know, but that's fun. I really love the Operation Christmas Child is a really fun one. I think it's so smart how you're always thinking like those intersections. How do I like layer upon it? That's so smart to get the youth involved. It's fun. I got my toddler involved last time. He was stealing all the toys, but it was a blast. That's a great serve. Okay, last question. Recommend something for us. I know we got Four Sigmatic coffee is a must. Other than that, what should we be reading or listening to? How do we get in your head a little?
I was thinking about this one a little bit, and it's super cliche, but I have to say, just getting in the Word. And I know that like you could give me another book or podcast or sermon, but I think with how much information we're just inundated with, and just as pastors like myself, but how can we really, really get rooted in the Word and what it says, and living that out, especially when it comes to being spiritual leaders in our communities, in our church. And totally cliche answer, but that'd be my number one go-to. But I am a huge Matt Chandler fan and a huge John Mark Comer fan. So if you're into any of those, my life has been changed by both of them. Had a crazy bad experience with Matt Chandler where I ruined my celebrity moment, but that's for another day. So
We need to have a podcast number 2 just to get that story out. That's hilarious.
yes.
I love it. Great advice. Is you can never be reminded of that enough. Just hunger for God's word. It's everything. Okay, so I know it's at Red Rocks Outreach on Instagram.
Yep.
Are you on Instagram? How else should we be following or getting in touch? All that fun stuff.
Yeah, I'd say redrocksoutreach.com is our website, and then at Red Rocks Outreach for social is probably the best ways to get in touch with us. And then if you have any questions, you can always email us. That's just outreach@redrockschurch.com.
Perfect. Okay. Anything else that I forgot to ask, or anything else you want to leave us with?
No, I'm just thankful for you and everything you're doing to try and just start a conversation around this. I did something like this with Flatirons Church. I'm with a bunch of pastors in the area, and I can't tell you how rewarding it was to just start having conversations and starting to be the church together, like one unified body with many parts. And so just thank you for being obedient with this time. And I'm sure COVID has also brought a lot of challenges and Zoom calls like this to continue to get people together, but it's fun to do life with others outside of the state and in different churches. So thank you truly for having me.
Oh, wow. Well, thank you so much. It has been fun. It's been an honor. And yeah, we look up to you and we're so inspired. So thank you guys for all that you do. All right, listeners, thank y'all so much for tuning in. We will see you next time on the SERVE Brew. Have a good week. Bye.